Welcome to this video, class, lesson, whatever we want to call it. What I'm going to do in this project is I'm going to take a reference photo and I'm going to sketch it in 4 ways. We're going to focus on some value, line, and then we're going to incorporate a little bit of color with the soft pastel and the oil pastel. If you don't have one of the 4 materials, say you don't have oil pastels and you don't intend on buying them, just skip it or use something else. You can use paint instead, just do a paint sketch. The point is that we explore this reference photo in more than just a quick pencil sketch. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I've found that when you sketch a photo more than once, it's going to be much easier to transfer that to a painting, especially with difficult angles or difficult features. When you've already been there once or twice or 3 times, it's going to look more familiar and you're going to be more aware of problematic areas. So simply getting to know your reference photo better. I hope you have fun and let me know if you have any questions. So let's start with a graphite pencil. I'm gonna divide my paper into 2 halves. My sketches are not going to be that big. So half of an A4 paper, which is approximately 8 by 10 inches. I have this one refillable pencil, if that's what you call it. I have no reason for choosing this pencil, it just happened to be laying around. Choose any graphite pencil you want. And I'm gonna start with the vertical line down the face, determining the angle, and then the horizontal, the eye line or the brow line, whichever you choose, to get an idea of the angle of the face. So that whatever we put in is aligned relative to the rest. So it's perfectly fine if your face is slightly more angled than the reference photo, as long as you make sure that all the other elements are angled the same. And I put in an indication of the nose, and on top of the nose bridge is the center of the glasses. And I'm gonna try and determine where the shadow is and where the outside, on the left side, the outside of the nose. And if you want to determine where things or features are, you can do 2 things. You can draw a vertical line parallel to the side of the paper. So an absolute parallel line, vertical line, I'm sorry. Or you can do a vertical line relative to the angle of the face. Okay, it's something that you need to work out for yourself, what you prefer. But whatever you choose, try, to take for instance, the insides of the eye corners and see where they line up. So there is the philtrum, that little dip above your lip. And then let's try and position the mouth. Because of the tilt of the face, the one corner of the mouth may be aligned differently to the eye than the other corner of the mouth. They only align the same when the face is facing forward. I'm going to try and put the chin in. There is very little shadow under the bottom lip. I'll try and get the shape of the face right by basically ignoring the glasses for a little bit. And try and put that in. Those insides of the glasses, they're resting against the nose. Yeah, otherwise they would fall off. So they're pretty big, which I believe is trending right now. So don't make them too small. And then the side of the face comes out here. Try and align both the top and the bottom of the ear to something. Yeah, we tend to make ears too small, I'm sorry. When they're quite big. And then the neck comes out, and then the muscle from it's that muscle where you massage people when they're stressed, that muscle. And put in a little bit of volume for the hair. And again, also don't make this too small, because there is a whole skull underneath that hair. And the thumb is sitting under and a little bit behind the chin. It's a little bit hidden behind the chin. And then there are the 3 fingertips are sticking out a little bit. We're not going to be putting too much detail in here. I'm just going to shade the right side. Just so I know, that's absolutely the darkest part of the face, which is obvious. But this is a sketch, okay? So we're not going to go into too much detail. I want to get a global idea of where the lightest areas are and where the darkest areas are, and then some of the midtones. But for this pencil sketch, for me, what's most important is getting to know the alignment of the features and trying to see if I made any mistakes in terms of the angle, if some things are obviously misaligned. And the same for that hand, not too much detail, just trying to see how those shadows are formed. There's another pretty dark area behind the hand. I'm going to put that in too. and on the right side. And those glasses on the right side, they're if you can see, they're intersecting with the face. Yeah, so they're partially outside the face, the edge of the face. Let's try and position the iris and the pupil. Pupils are always dead center. They're always in the middle of the iris because they can't move, right? So they're always in the center. And just a little bit of shading. The brows are partially hidden by the top edge of the glasses. And there's obviously a lot more shading going on. I'm not going to get into that now. So I think this was a nice first attempt. And if you want to add more detail, please, by all means, go ahead, or more shading, whatever you want. I'm going to wrap this up, and then we're going to continue with our next sketch in charcoal. So I'm just gonna start on the other half of my page. I hope it's not too confusing with the sketch on there already. And you know, when I work with charcoal, I work differently. For some reason, I start with bigger shapes, and you know, starting with a pencil drawing first, it kind of allows you, or it allows me, to get some bigger shapes in when you work with charcoal, right? Because there's no point in repeating what you already did in the previous sketch. So I'm going to try and block in bigger areas. And I feel also that I can do that because I've already sort of been there in those areas. I've already touched them with a pencil once. So you sort of, like I said before, you build up your confidence in these sketching routines. And it allows you to explore different areas. Because maybe, you know, when you want to paint this, maybe you want to start with bigger areas. So it's nice if you've already done that in a medium that is, you know, it's kind. You can erase charcoal. It's not terribly difficult. It doesn't take ages to dry or anything. I'm gonna take out that hand on the side of the face. I'm using willow charcoal, by the way, I think, because I throw all my charcoal in a container, and I don't know which is which. You know how you start out with keeping everything in their original boxes and organized and everything, and then after a while everything's just one big pile of stuff. That's how it goes in my studio. So it's probably willow, but it could be something else. I'm gonna do the hair with some darker values because it's easy with the charcoal. You know, you can cover a lot of ground at once. I'm too lazy to do that kind of stuff in charcoal. I'm sorry, in graphite. I just end up doing the outline. There are graphite blocks available too, by the way, if you like that kind of thing. I think I have one around. They're really big blocks. You can block in a lot of graphite at once. Just a tip for you in case you need a reason to buy more art supplies, right? I'm just going to put in some darker shadows. You're going to experiment a little bit with a higher contrast here because, again, you know, it's pretty black. You can get charcoal pretty black. So you can see if you like that. Let's do a little bit of blending. I like this about charcoal. You can get sort of an effect that sits between paint and dry media. And it's, again, it's just regular drawing paper that I'm using. Nothing special. It's not very grainy, by the way. I'm just going to use the blending to create some midtones, mainly. You can also move your charcoal around to alter or create different shapes. And especially in the eye area, if you've, like I did, created one big black blob, you can take some out and sort of refine that shape a little bit. And other than shape, you can pay attention to the, you know, directionality of your blending. You're blending to smudging to the left or to the right. It creates different effects and different shapes. I'm gonna try not to blend everything and keep a little bit of that charcoal roughness. And sometimes I use whatever's left on my finger to create some darker midtones here and there. And this is an eraser. It's a hard plastic eraser. I think it's by General, but I don't remember. You can use a kneadable eraser or one of those, little ones that look like pencils. I'm not going to pay too much attention to the hand because I already did that with the pencil. A little bit on the eye. I think we're good here so far. So we're going to continue with some pastel, soft pastel in the next part. Alright, so I took a new sheet of paper and I have three values. Yeah, so it really doesn't matter which color. You can take any color you want. But try and get at least two values. If you don't have a lighter one, that's fine. You can use the white of your paper if you want. But if you can do three, that would be great. It gives you a little bit of option. I'm going to start with the middle value. I think in my case it's a raw umber, I think. But again, you can take the brightest colors you want. It really doesn't matter. Right, so this is the first time that we're using more than one color, not more than one value, because we created different values in graphite and in charcoal. The thing with pastel, and the reason why it's a great step up to working with paint, is that you can layer pastel. You can layer the dark over the midtone. You can layer the lighter value also over the midtone. So this is sort of painting simplified, or at least that's how it feels to me sometimes when working with pastel. There are limitations to what you can do. After a while, your paper is saturated and you can't layer on top of it anymore. But in general, you can do a lot of blending and layering with soft pastel. The one thing, in case you haven't worked with pastel yet, or you're not that experienced, it does not erase. All right, so don't put your clean eraser into this stuff, because it's not going to come off, both your paper and your eraser. And I'm going to keep this pastel dry in this demo, but in case you want to experiment some more, you can actually dilute pastel with water. Yeah, it's going to turn into sort of a watercolor paint. And when you're using a good quality pastel, you're going to be pretty amazed at how intense that color can actually get. So that's interesting. Yeah, you can work with water, or you can combine it with paint if you want. So I'm putting the darker value on and just sort of moving it around. It's not a very big piece that I have. I break up my pastels and into little chunks, and then they end up being even smaller after some use. So I think it's sort of a blue-gray, that darker color. I think it comes from this set of several gray tones that again used to be in one box, but not anymore. So what I usually do with blending pastel, I don't often use like tissue paper or those blending sticks. I just try and layer them on top of each other a little bit, and when you do that, they sort of blend into each other. And you kind of keep that texture a little bit, and at the same time, they mix a bit on your paper. I'm not a huge fan of that super smooth blended pastel look. I'm also too impatient for that, so. Put the hair in again. I'm gonna try and make that a little darker. See if I like that. You can try if you prefer the hair in your mid-tone or in your darker color or some combination. Also, one thing about soft pastels, I buy them single. I don't usually buy sets. I have one set that is, again, the grays. But I buy them single, and what you can also do is that most manufacturers, they have this one color, say raw umber, and then they have all the different values. Like Rembrandt has raw umber, and then there are like 10 values of that from light to dark. And so you can choose your values in the same color range, or you can choose your values in a different color range, whatever you prefer. I prefer a little variety, say, colder color in the shadows and then a warmer midtone, or you can turn that around. But if you're overwhelmed by the amount of colors in the sheets from the manufacturer, you can always choose one color and buy 3 different values and work with that for a little while. I'm gonna put the hair in with the shadow color. And I'm gonna take the lightest value in a bit and work into those wider areas of the paper. My lighter value is actually a light raw umber because it's a bit warm. So it's from the same range as the mid-tone. I like the warmer highlight with the colder color in the shadow. I'm just going to put that in the lighter areas and blend it into the mid-tone a little bit. And just to complete the hand and a bit of the shoulder. And that was soft pastel. So we're going to move on to oil pastel now. So again, 3 values. I have 2 midtones here just to show you that you can use any combination that you want. I think I'm going to use the red one with a darker value and a highlight. I put a sheet of paper over the left sketch that we made because I'm left-handed, and you know I'm going to wipe that out. I always try and remind myself not to work from left to right, seeing how I've been left-handed for, I don't know, all my life. But that never happens. Which is why my sketchbook is super weird, because I just keep finding ways to turn it and get my hand out of the way. I broke my pastel, so it's actually broken in the middle. So I have to push it back every now and then. This is Chinese orange, which is probably my favorite color in the world, and I don't know why. It's also the first pastel that I've ever used, and I'm slightly weird about stuff like that, so that's probably why it's still my favorite. They're all by Sennelier, by the way, which are the only oil pastels that I use. They're very, very soft. Okay, if you like a harder oil pastel, I recommend some Neocolor or something by Derwent. I think they have a couple. But Sennelier are very, very soft. And by now, sketching this, I noticed myself hardly looking at the reference photo, and it's kind of funny how that works. When you start out, you're paying a lot of attention to the reference photo, and it takes energy, it takes brain power to do that. And when you get to know that reference photo better and you start paying less attention to the photo because some of these movements are already automatic, what I find is that the way that I sketch and the way that I work is differently. It's looser. Your energy is somehow channeled differently when your mind is not completely occupied by paying attention to what it is you're drawing. So that's kind of the point of this whole exercise, is to automate the movements and to, make your brain remember what it's supposed to be doing. So it can do that almost automatically, and you can pay attention to other stuff. Yeah, it's definitely broken. Alright. Kind of feel like I broke my mother's lipstick. And you can layer oil pastel the same way you do soft pastel. And so you layer stuff on top of it and it kind of blends into the underlying layer. If you want to experiment with mediums, you can try oil, okay? Because it's an oil pastel, so you can't work water into it unless you have a water-soluble oil pastel, which is a whole different category. But this stuff, you can dilute it with oil or any oil medium. But if you don't have any of those oil paint mediums, then you can use like sunflower oil or whatever kitchen oil you have, or baby oil, and just try some stuff. When you use oil, by the way, like a medium onto regular paper, it's going to leak out the back. Okay, so if it's a sketch that you're going to discard, that's probably fine. If you want to keep stuff, then you need to make sure that either your paper is suitable for oil, or you've gessoed a couple of layers at least on it. But this is a sketch, so if you want to try and mix some stuff, go right ahead. I have this little thingy that most people use for blending charcoal, but I'm gonna stick it in my oil pastel because yeah, why not? You can blend with it, and what I prefer is to sort of move it around a little bit, and you can draw in it if your layer is thick enough. You can draw with it a little bit. You can also use your fingers to blend this stuff. Just don't touch your face afterwards like I do. And then walk out the door, you know, to the supermarket. I actually came home the other day and my son was at home and said, "Mom, you do know you have stuff in your face, right?" And I just said, yeah, I do. I was just too embarrassed to admit that I'd gone to the supermarket with paint on my face. And I actually have to go into an elevator to get down from my apartment. And it has a huge mirror, that elevator. And I didn't see it. It was a huge blob of paint on my face. And all you can do is hope that people know you're that, you know, crazy artist living on the 11th floor and that it's okay. I'm just layering that mid-tone and that darker color. Maybe try a little bit, you know, of definition in the shadows and experiment a little bit with that. See what you like. There is definition in the shadows in the reference photo. You just need to look at it maybe a little bit longer to see it and let your eye adjust to that. And just following the same shapes again, so there's not much I can tell you here that's new. If you have any great stories, by the way, of walking outside in your painting clothes or artist stuff, let me know. It makes us feel less alone, knowing that other people are also out there with paint on their face. So just putting in the highlight, that is a colder highlight. By the way, it's sort of a gray blue. I'm just trying that out because the highlight in the pastel version was warm. So maybe try something colder here. And see how you like that color balance. Yeah, I kind of like that. I like the red. I didn't think it was gonna work. I thought maybe it was too intense, but I kind of like it. Yeah. So that's it for these 4 versions of the same person. I'd love to see what you're doing. So don't forget to tag me, yeah, if you post anything on Facebook. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, you know where to find me on social media. And I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.